audience, esteemed guests, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome to you today's panels on EU's hydrogen roadmap. As European Union strives for climate neutrality by 2050, hydrogen is set to play a crucial role in this transformation. So today we will explore three key aspects of the hydrogen journey. First, we will talk about the Romanian role in hydrogen economy and technology. And then we will discover about the potential of connecting Africa and Euro-Mediterranean energy systems and the promise of green hydrogen as a global game changer. We are honored to have with us a panel of distinguished experts, and I encourage you to actively engage in this discussion as your questions and insights are invaluable. So without further ado, let us begin. Please join me welcoming our first speaker, Eugenia Gustov from Romania Energy Center. Eugenia, floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning to everyone. A few words about the organization that I represent. We are called Romania Energy Center, ROEC. In short, we are the first energy studies think tank that was established in Romania, and we're an entirely English-speaking organization which focuses on research and analysis of markets, policies, economics, but mostly things related to energy. Today, in my intervention, I wanted to speak about how Romania came to approach the topic of hydrogen. So the first discussions about hydrogen and the idea to have a hydrogen strategy started sometime in 2018 when Romania signed this hydrogen initiative. But then we realized we don't have a hydrogen strategy. We should write draft one, but nothing happened for about 3 years until 2022. We even, and Romania's efforts to draft such a document specifically for hydrogen and hydrogen use and new uses for hydrogen and renewable hydrogen specifically, let's say that this efforts to draft this hydrogen strategy, it's actually funded and supported financially through the Romania's National Recovery and Resilience Fund. So this analytical effort and efforts of Romania to draft this national strategy is also supported from the EU level. We finally started this effort in 2022, and last year there was published a draft strategy for consultation. The first draft appeared or was published in summer, so sometime in June 2023. Then there was a round of comments and feedback collected, and then it was republished again for consultation sometime in fall of 2023 with slightly different numbers and things we want to do in terms of targets. However, I would like to emphasize the fact that Romania is a traditional hydrogen producer. However, the entire hydrogen that we produce, which is related to the refinery process, it's gray hydrogen, so it's unabated hydrogen, so hydrogen from which we did not take out the carbon. So we do not use currently in Romania any carbon capture, utilization and storage for hydrogen. So it's dirty hydrogen, right, in terms of emissions, CO2 emissions. So the discussion and the idea behind this strategy was to bring into discussion what it is that we would like to do and how much strategy we would like to produce, but clean hydrogen, renewable, green hydrogen, right? Because there's this difference between, let's say, green hydrogen, which has less than 1 kilogram of CO2 to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen, and low carbon hydrogen, which can have up to 5.5 kilogram of CO2 to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. So the way you produce hydrogen matters because it can be polluting or it can be a clean process during which you do not produce so much carbon or CO2 emissions. Anyway, this entire effort and Romania's latest efforts to craft a hydrogen strategy and to approach the renewable hydrogen specifically comes in the context of what the EU is doing. And the EU, has been extremely ambitious. It has launched its hydrogen strategy in the pandemic year in 2020, in July, if I'm not mistaken. But then So it came with the targets at the time, 6 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity by 2024. Then, and it wanted also to expand it to 40 gigawatts by 2030. In terms of green hydrogen production, 1 million tons of green hydrogen produced by 2024 and 10 million tons produced by 2030. So those were the initial EU targets set on the table in 2020. Then, of course, the war in Ukraine came, and EU adopted the Repower EU package in 2022. What this Repower EU package does, it increases the ambition, including for hydrogen production in EU, and it says, okay, we will not produce 10 million tons as we said in 2020. We will produce double that amount, 20 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, which will produce domestically on the European continent 10 million, and we want to import an additional 10 million tons. And all that is to replace about 50 billion cubic meters of Russian gas. So the Repower EU package that was adopted in May 2022 is very important because it ups the level of ambition at the European level for hydrogen, specifically green hydrogen, because it also brings into question and adds the fact that the EU wants to import 10 million tons from outside Europe. Of course, this comes with the funding. There is also an EU hydrogen bank, which Ursula von der Leyen announced, I think, a year ago or 2 years ago. I think it was during her speech to the Union. But anyway, so this effort and Romania's efforts to craft its strategy is EU-driven, because left on our own, we wouldn't have been that ambitious and wouldn't have drafted any hydrogen strategy. But this is a requirement, and it's considered one of the reforms, and the money that the Romania receives, including through the National Recovery and Resilience Fund, the Romanian NRPP, is conditional on implementing some reforms. And this document is one such important policy reform and policy measure. So that's why we adopted it, we drafted it, and we try to structure our plans, what we want to do with it. In terms of our approach, I would like to say that I did contribute to part of this effort, specifically the initial stage in which we have mapped out what the other countries are doing all over the world. We haven't looked at all of them in depth, but we did look more in depth at some of them, around 15. And what we discovered was the following in that exercise: the fact that the big countries, big industrial countries, are extremely ambitious. So they want all options on the table. They want to use hydrogen in all sectors possible. So industry, heating as a storage option, transport. But these are countries that have deep pockets. These are usually countries that have allocated significant public money. If you talk about the United States, we're talking about sums in the range of 7 billion to 10 billion euros for countries such as France, Germany, the United States, Japan. Of course, the big countries prefer to use public money. The smaller countries prefer to capacitate private sector money. For instance, Netherlands has capacitated something to the tune of 8 or 9 billion euro, but it's mostly private sector money, so not public money. Anyway, we have gone through this exercise, and what we have discovered is that the big countries want to have their options, open, and want to explore all possible avenues for new hydrogen utilization. But the smaller countries, the medium-sized countries, they actually go through a prioritization exercise, and they choose. And what they tend to choose is the following two sectors: industry, so new hydrogen uses in industry, and hydrogen use in transport. Sure, you can have such countries as Croatia, for instance, in which they or countries that have islands, right? And countries that have islands and have renewable projects on those islands and do not have let's say, an electricity transport system in which to feed this electricity produced, right? They would prefer the excess, which does not fit in a grid because you cannot feed it into a grid, and they curtail it. So it's a loss of economic value. They prefer, and they are talking about how to monetize this excess electricity production on islands to produce hydrogen, for instance. It's very interesting, but that's not a question that exists, and this approach we haven't seen in continental countries, which have an access to the grid, right? Anyway, there's this whole range of way you can produce hydrogen, and of course, in the world, we produce around up to 100 million tons per year. So some not quite 100, but up to, so it's 94, 95, something like that. Of this amount, around 11.5 is produced in Europe. And a couple of years ago, of this amount of hydrogen that was produced in Europe, less than 1 million ton, 99% of it was gray hydrogen, so unabated hydrogen, right? Without taking the carbon out. Now there's this whole color coding. And if we talk about hydrogen produced from natural gas, they say it's blue hydrogen. Produced through steam methane reforming. If you talk about hydrogen produced through electrolysis, so using electricity, but depending on how this electricity is produced, it can be, well, green hydrogen if the electricity is produced from renewable projects, pink hydrogen, right? If it's produced from nuclear projects, then you have an interest in brown hydrogen. I even heard brown hydrogen produced through electrolysis using electricity, so electricity and water, but electricity produced from coal. So Poland, in its strategy, has a significant interest in producing electricity, hydrogen with electricity produced from coal, so brown hydrogen. So what we have also noticed during this exercise is the fact that those countries which have resources, so for instance, if you talk about an oil and gas producer, they stress low carbon hydrogen, right? As opposed to countries that lack their own resources, which want to produce green, renewable hydrogen, right? This is the case of Germany, for instance. Germany will import a lot of hydrogen because Germany doesn't have its own oil and gas production, or it's insignificant. But countries such as Canada, countries such as the United States, they stress the use of oil and gas, so they want to adapt the industry and add a new use for the oil and gas industry in terms of like producing hydrogen, but low carbon hydrogen. That means hydrogen produced from natural gas, which the idea is to take it a step further and to take the carbon out of it, to capture the carbon, to abate it, right? So to produce hydrogen, not like now, gray hydrogen, but taking the carbon out. So with carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Now, what we have noticed in terms of countries that do not have this wide range of options, right? And Romania is not a country with deep pockets. So my recommendation for the Romanian government was to choose two, not to focus on everything, not to try to do everything with the hydrogen, but to focus on what's easiest to achieve, to focus on the low-hanging fruit. And that, in my opinion, is industry, because industry will comply to the mandates and the regulations coming from the EU, which forces them to green their industrial processes. So the companies that are active in industry across Europe have this preoccupation and are doing this pilot projects on their own in different countries in Europe. So it would be easier to start with industry, because industry by itself will be a driving force of this process, because they have to comply with some mandates, and they are reforming, right? Producing steel with direct reduction of iron, and so trying new technologies, implementing new technologies, and then transport. But for transport, you need, of course, to implement some mandatory quotas to drive this process and to incentivize the, let's say, the companies and the whole subsector to adopt and to transition to adopt hydrogen as an alternative fuel. And then there's the question of building the hydrogen refueling stations. And what we have seen is that countries in Europe have specific, not only Europe, but specific targets in terms of numbers. We want to build this amount of hydrogen refueling stations in France. We want to have a fleet of, I don't know, 800 hydrogen fueling buses on the roads of Poland, for instance. So every country sets specific targets, and they usually go targets up until 2030 and then targets up until 2040, 2050. So this is the approach that we at ROIC recommended also for the Romanian government. And as you know, Romania also was one of the first countries in Europe who adopted a law instituting some mandatory quotas to push the adoption of hydrogen, so obligatory quotas. So this is a new law. The industry is still adapting to it. It didn't have time to produce its effects, but at least we have the legal framework to push this forward and to help us adopt, let's say, hydrogen as an alternative fuel in transport. But the thing in Romania with the transport is that the companies, the incumbents, they favor the uptake of biofuel. So that's why maybe initially they had more ambitious targets, but if you compare the strategies, the two draft strategies that came out in public consultation, the one in June is more ambitious, and then the targets were slashed in the second version that appeared in fall in terms of hydrogen production, but also hydrogen used by industry and specifically in transport, because they thought better and they said, let's not overcommit to way too ambitious targets. I don't know how much time I have left, because I could say a few more things.
What is it? 10 minutes more you have.
All right. So this is, I mean, to give you a little bit of context, Romania currently produces, let's say, give or take, it varies. In 2019, it's different than in 2020 or 2021, but let's take on average 200,000 tons of hydrogen, all of it gray hydrogen. It's mostly a byproduct of the refinery processing processes. So Romania does not have, let's say, facilities that produce hydrogen with the aim to sell this hydrogen, right? So merchant hydrogen production, we don't have anything of that kind. It's mostly related to the refining processes and to the activity of the refineries that we have in Romania. Then another exercise that we have gone through for this, for our national hydrogen strategy, but also looking what other countries have done. This is the idea to promote hydrogen, specifically in its early stages, to cut costs in order to achieve an optimum economic, let's say, cost. To go with the idea of creating hydrogen hubs, or they are called hubs mostly in the United States, but in Europe I see the prevalence and the preference to use the term of hydrogen valleys. What's the idea of this hydrogen valley / hydrogen hub? Is to co-locate production and consumption of hydrogen in order to reduce the need to invest in networks to transport at high distances or to ship, right? So to have it more or less in the same area where it will be consumed, because then you do not waste a lot of money upgrading your networks or shipping in different forms the hydrogen to its final destination, right? So in the United States, we have seen this idea to have 4 hydrogen hubs. Then we have this in Europe pioneer project in Netherlands, the Heaven project, which is developed in the northern part of Netherlands near the Groningen area. So in the area where they used to produce, and was one of the most important natural gas production area, which now is being shut down. So, and they find different uses for this hydrogen consumption. So for instance, in residential consumption, in transport, right? So private sectors, entities and public sector entities are involved. And I know this project was even awarded 2 years ago in Brussels for its innovative character. Now, we in Romania too have looked at where such potential hydrogen valleys could be located, because right now in Romania's approach to its hydrogen strategy, we do not plan on importing hydrogen, and we do not plan on exporting any hydrogen. So whatever hydrogen that we will produce will be consumed locally. This is in stark opposition to countries such as Germany, which, for instance, and there is this specialization going on between countries which know for sure that we will be, I don't know, Germany knows for sure that it will be a hydrogen importer. And it's looking to conclude partnerships with the countries that, could produce. Japan, the same thing. Japan will be a hydrogen importer. And actually, Japan did import some brown hydrogen from Australia. So, hydrogen produced through electrolysis using electricity from coal. And this shipment was successful 2 years ago. So, this can be done. And interesting, there are countries that, for instance, like Japan, are colorblind. So, they don't care how the hydrogen is produced as long as it's hydrogen. So, they will take it irrespective of how of the CO2 emissions per 1 kilogram of hydrogen production. So that's specific of the Japanese approach. Then we have, for instance, this specialization. I would like to talk a little bit about the hydrogen mobility, because what we have seen, countries in Europe that emphasize the use of hydrogen in transport. And for instance, the Czech Republic. Then we have also seen, with specific mandates of types of cars, passenger cars, buses. Croatia even wanted to use hydrogen for garbage collection vehicles, for instance. So all types of uses, and going as deep, and the types of cars that would use hydrogen. Then we have seen, and this is interesting, and Romania is not doing this, unfortunately, but we have seen projects, cross-border projects, Italy, Slovakia, and another neighboring country, I can't remember, developing a hydrogen valley. Then we have seen the Hydrogen Eagle, I think it was called, project between Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, in which they develop a mobility ecosystem that would use hydrogen. And it's not only in one country. So they develop, usually it's in this case, a private sector company that's developing in 3 countries simultaneously, developing the hydrogen refueling network. Romania doesn't have this approach, so we are not working with our neighbors, nor Hungary, nor Bulgaria, nor any other country, to develop this cross-border mobility ecosystems. We don't have anything like that. So, 2 ideas: the focus in Romania's case on industry and mobility, and much more reduced targets for hydrogen use, and specifically renewable green hydrogen use, than what it initially wanted, right? In terms of using it for residential heating, our argument and my argument for the Romanian government was, because initially, we also had money available through the National Recovery and Resilience Facility to upgrade some gas networks, or to develop new gas networks in regions where gas network is non-existent, Oltenia, for instance, and to create it from the very beginning so that it can use a mixture of natural gas and hydrogen, right? Then this idea was dropped, and my recommendation for the Romanian government was to not hurry in this regard, because we have seen in Germany that initially said, okay, we want to use this for residential heating, and then Germany took a step back and said, we need to study this problem, and we'll postpone the decision for after 2040. And we have seen also, like, a rich country, the UK, who as well said that they need to collect data from the pilot projects they're conducting, and analyzing the data until 2027, and then somehow postponing the decision after that, because it seems that it's not the best solution for residential heating, and that the alternative electrification of residential heating is better and more economic and cost effective if you compare the two. So in that regard, I'm glad to see that the Romanian government took a step back and is now not rushing anymore into embracing hydrogen and using hydrogen for residential heating, because we still need to to understand better how that works and all the economic consequences. And if Germany is not ready and the UK is not ready, I can tell you that definitely Romania is not ready as well. That's it from my side in terms of let's say initial remarks. Maybe I can add more in our discussion later.
It was really great presentation for us. It was the whole continent analyzed for me. It was I'm really thanks for this beautiful presentation, and thank you so much for all details that you give us. It was just not for Romania, but comparing with the whole European continent, but by every country. So we are really grateful for this information that you let us to know. We have one question, and I also have a question. Maybe I am also can be wrong. You can also correct me. But first, I will just read the question that we got from our audience. What do you think about the future of photoelectrochemical, thermochemical water splitting for hydrogen production? So it's a little technological questions, but do you have any technological readiness for this kind of for hydrogen production? It is electrochemical, thermochemical water splitting. It is a little engineering term, but do you have any strategy for that in your country?
I'm not sure I have understood the question well, but it relates to Romania's production of equipment. I'm not sure if we are well positioned or have any. I mean, even if you look at production of renewable equipment, Romania uses mostly imported equipment. So the country that has a strategy on producing equipment for hydrogen utilization options is Germany. They want to beef up their electrolyzer capacity. I'm not aware of Romania having any production capacity, and this is a minus. As far as I know, but I would have to dig deeper to be able to fully answer that that question. But here too, there is a lot of, I mean, there's a specialization going on because you have countries, for instance, again, Croatia, in which they have included in their national hydrogen strategy the fact that they want 5 hydrogen-related patents, so research and development, by 2030 and 50 by 2050, because right now most of the hydrogen related patents, so on the innovation side, belong to a couple of countries. So that's the United States, Japan, South Korea, and the expectation is that if, let's say, the West, the industrialized West, now has let's say an advantage in that, this advantage will shift slowly to Middle East and Africa, because they too want to build their equipment production capacity, electrolyzer capacity, and they have plans in this regard. So if we now have a more or less, let's say, dominant position in this regard, it is not necessarily that Europe or the advanced industrial nations of Asia and the United States will keep it if other countries are coming strong and catching up, specifically countries located in the Middle East, which too have projects to produce hydrogen and export hydrogen, specifically to Europe. But in terms of, let's say, equipment and who holds patents, what we have observed, is that Japan, for instance, and South Korea are the two countries that have very strong position in fuel cell technology, because we have, let's say, hydrogen-driven cars that are commercially available based on fuel cell technology, like fuel cell electric vehicle, FCEVs, since 2014. So we now have 10 years almost of sales and commercialization of hydrogen, of cars that work based on hydrogen. The uptake of hydrogen indeed falls behind that of the electric vehicles. That's true. So if we have had this impressive growth in electric vehicles sales, not the same can be said about hydrogen, let's say hydrogen buses or hydrogen vehicles, but they are more developed, let's say Japan and South Korea, we have noticed. And South Korea also, as well as Poland, is interested in using modules of fuel cell driven by, let's say, or fueled by hydrogen, also for space heating. So these two countries, Poland and South Korea, are looking into these two utilization options, but with fuel cells, so hydrogen fuel cells.
Thank
That's
you
my
for your reply. And I wanted to ask you, maybe I missed that point in your presentation too. Nowadays, as I am a diplomacy expert, we are always seeing that some news about the new nuclear project in Romania with a huge budget from the West countries. So what do you think about in the future, the nuclear power in Romania can be a source of the hydrogen energy system, or there's any strategies like that Romania thinking about it? So I wanted to just ask that.
That's a wonderful question, because it is the position of the Romanian government that for us, not only the renewable hydrogen is important. The renewable hydrogen is important for Brussels, and that's why the strategy is mostly about that. But Romania is open and would like to continue to use also blue hydrogen, so with some carbon capture and storage. And there is a pilot project, a small one, at one of OMV Petrom's refineries, which is underway these years. But it's a testing phase at this stage, so it's no industrial capacity that we're talking about. And yes, the Romanian government is open and interested also in pink hydrogen, so hydrogen produced through electrolysis using electricity produced by a nuclear power plant, because we have plans to add 2 reactors. They move at a snail's pace, as you know, and years later we still don't have unit 3 and 4. Then we were very ambitious in the sense that we wanted to embrace also the technology for small modular reactors. But there is something happening with let's say, the economic investments and cooperation, specifically the American one in Romania, in the sense that there is already what I think is a track record of derailing projects with American participation in the Romanian economy. And I'm starting to believe that this is a deliberate strategy, because we have had Chevron that came and wanted to produce shale gas and left without doing it. We had Exxon, who wanted to take the natural gas out of the Romanian Black Sea segment and was kicked out, so left. And now we have this promising cooperation with NuScale, and we would like to build. I mean, a part of the Romanian society and of the decision-making establishment is interested in promoting this new technology and being the first on the market. Not the first, but the first in this side of Europe to implement, to build such let's say, technology like the SMRs. And yet there is significant opposition within the Romanian society against it, which say that we do not want to do anything experimental when even this SMR technology is not experimental. It's a miniaturization of a technology that has been used many times in bigger, let's say, reactors, the classical ones, traditional ones. So there is an interest, but there are also forces in Romania that keep these projects. I mean, they do not progress, they do not advance for different reasons. And I think there is a certain degree of self-sabotage from one side of the Romanian society towards the more advanced type of projects that the other side of the Romanian society is trying to develop and to promote, right? I mean, our SMR project is not moving forward. Right now it's on pause, the one at Doicești, while we see other countries in the region, Poland, even Ukraine, which has a memorandum to build some components for this SMRs. We have seen Hungary sign recently with Japan a cooperation agreement to also do something in the field of the small modular reactors. So I think it would be a tremendous loss if Romania does not catch this train after it was one of the first countries to jump on it in Eastern Europe. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your answer. And maybe we have a few minutes more for one more question. There is another audience just texted that, how do you assess the potential of the incentives provided by the Romanian government to promote hydrogen technologies to influence the hydrogen strategies of companies in the industry sector?
Right now, I do not see a specific framework created for, let's say, the first movers, the industrial companies that want to be the first ones to be implementing or adopting this technology. So I think the Romanian government relies mostly on the multitude of funding available through the different European programs And there are plenty which offer financing for this type of projects because it's considered a frontier field, you see. And although, but my personal recommendation would have been to indeed create a special framework for the first such projects in Romania so that it's easier for them to be developed, specifically because they are the first ones. And being a pioneer, you face all kinds of problems and difficulties. But I do not see an interest within the Romanian government to actually do what I'm talking about, like a grandfathering regime or like a sandbox regime, right? Like a special regime for the first one, two, or three such projects, or for the first hydrogen valley, in which special rules would apply for this special, first hydrogen project in Romania. No, I think that they rely mostly on the funding available out there, and they consider that it's plenty. But I do not see Romania being very good at joining, let's say, consortia and alliances which are required, because there's a tremendous diplomatic effort required to identify the stakeholders, to put all this deal, to structure it in order to be able to put such a project in practice, like what the Dutch did with the Heaven project. It requires a lot of effort, dialogue, and I just don't see the Romanian government being capable of being in the driver's seat for that one. But I do know that the companies in Romania, and we have about 16 or 17 of them, which are producers of hydrogen or users of hydrogen. I mean, the main actors in this hydrogen ecosystem that we have, the gray hydrogen, the dirty one, they are interested, and they would like the government step up and offer like a package of special incentives for the first movers in this field. So they would very much like to see the Romanian government shelter them, so that to nurture this green hydrogen ecosystem, if we want to have one.
Okay, thank you so much for your all answers. So then we can go for our next presentation with our esteemed speakers, Mr. Fabio Indeo, and his presentation will be about green hydrogen, a potential game changer in the global scenario. So floors is yours, Mr. Indeo. We are listening for you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your invitation. It is a pleasure for me to share views with a very high-profile expert of hydrogen. So it is also useful for me to extend my knowledge and my debate about green hydrogen. I have a presentation. Oh, maybe.
If you want, we can also open it, or if you want, you can also upload and you can also move the slides.
I've sent you the slides by WhatsApp.
Okay, so we will just open the presentation when you start your presentation.
So, but sorry, only one moment. So you showed the slide for me.
Okay, we will just open it now.
If you want, because I'm not able now to open to have the sharing of condividi schermo. No, I have no chance to share my slides.
Okay, now we will open it. Maybe you can also start your presentation now.
Yeah. My idea, my task today is to talk about green hydrogen, and in order to show, on the one hand, the huge potential of green hydrogen in order to achieve the so-called target concerning carbon neutrality, concerning the possibility to reduce pollutions, in order to support the global efforts in order to achieve the global transition. But on the other hand, so it is also easy to highlight some vulnerabilities which affect the future energy scenario, also based on hydrogen, because I think this is a part of a study that I'm developing with the Hague Research Institute as well as with the University of Siena concerning the weakness of the global energy system, which appear now of, dependent on oil and gas, on imports, and an unbalanced energy system. But also in the future, we have some vulnerabilities concerning hydrogen due to the gradual, the different capacity of specific countries to produce enough hydrogen in order to meet their national demand. So it means that a condition of dependence on imports of some countries and imports of hydrogen by pipelines or by maritime routes, which replicate the same vulnerability of the current energy system. Great. This is my first, so this is the title of my presentation. We can move to the next, please. Next slide. So the possibility, as I mentioned, to achieve the neutrality targets and especially to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, as you know, a global commitment of all the countries around the world to have a more clean and safe energy world, if you want. But you know that in order to achieve this target, it is necessary to increase the clean energy production. So this is one of my concern, I think, because I believe that the future energy system need a combination of hydrogen, of green hydrogen, as well as the possibility to increase the production of energy, clean energy produced through renewable energy sources. But the problem is that it is necessary to increase a lot of the production of clean electricity in order to meet both the targets, in order to use renewable to produce green hydrogen, as well as to use renewables in order to diversify the energy mix. So the combination of energy sources used for produce clean electricity. As my colleague previously mentioned, that natural gas, it is also an option to produce hydrogen. So in my study, I also highlight that in the medium term, in the short medium term, these countries such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, also the United States and Australia can be the front runner in order to produce hydrogen, even if the next and hopefully step is to produce green hydrogen by combining with the electrolysis process, so using renewable energy sources and we can jump to the previous one, please, slide, because I'd like to highlight another factor, so that it is necessary to produce green hydrogen, the combination, the use of three factors. It means the combination of three factors, or to have the availability of low-cost renewable sources, the availability of water, and the infrastructural potential for production, internal distribution, and transport. So it is necessary the combination of all three actors. In this slide, I highlight the definition of energy security, which is important now due to the threats to the energy security system, but please use this concept also concerning green hydrogen or the future energy system. This slide could be useful when we deal with the problems concerning the green energy transition. We have two different concepts of energy security: the perspective of energy consumers and the perspective of the energy suppliers. So in the case of oil and gas, energy consumers, EU, China, and Japan; the energy suppliers, Russia, United States, and Middle East countries. But the common point is the regular energy supply without disruption. You know that the transit through a third country concerning pipelines, as well as the energy choke points and maritime routes, can affect the energy security condition. But in the future energy landscape based on green hydrogen, true, but not all countries will be able to produce green hydrogen or blue hydrogen. So it means that this country will depend on imports of green hydrogen. So highlighting, replicating a similar condition of vulnerability, which can be managed in time, solving the same problem which currently affect, for instance, the energy security of the European Union. So developing regional or sub-regional energy interconnection. As my colleague previously mentioned, the different project in the sub-regional project involving countries in the European Union, Italy, Slovak, Poland. So it is necessary to, it is one point of the EU energy security, to develop this segment, this regional or sub-regional interconnection in order to fill the gap, in order to supply the countries which need energy. Please, next slide. And you know the different application of the hydrogen as a raw material, and especially hydrogen can be used as a fuel, because when it burns, it can generate heat without emitting carbon dioxide, as well as also in fuel cells and for the electrical vehicles, and also as a carrier. It is the very turning point, if you want, a kind of geo-energy watershed, the possibility to use hydrogen as a carrier for the transport and storage of renewable energy, because it is able, hydrogen, especially green hydrogen, to ensure regularity in the availability and distribution of energy, so avoiding the potential interruption of the energy flows, and the possibility to have a regular energy flow from the production center to the consumption center. And also, it is important in order, as my colleague mentioned, even if I joined you late, but it was interesting because also she highlighted that hydrogen could be a promising option in order for the hard-to-abate sector, for several industries, and especially for transport. And next slide, hydrogen. We have different colors which characterize hydrogen, but the focus of this panel and the focus of my presentation is based on green hydrogen, produced combining renewable and water with zero emission. So this is the key, this appears the key option in order to achieve carbon neutrality, especially in the European Union. Even if we can observe that 95% of the current production is based on fossil fuel concerning green hydrogen. So my idea, my leading idea is that, okay, hydrogen could be an option to reduce dependence on oil and gas. It is less polluting than hydrocarbons, but please consider that the high-level commitment of the European countries, as well as the countries of the world, to achieve the carbon neutrality, we can also consider in the case of China, is challenging compared to the situation to use green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, pink or orange hydrogen, because they are based on the same vulnerabilities which affect the current energy system. For instance, the case of blue hydrogen. So, and the use of the carbon capture and storage of greenhouse gas emission. Even if you know that this technology is able to capture only or until to 90% of greenhouse gas emissions. So it is not completely zero emission. It is a good option, but it is not complete zero emission. So, of course, technology and investment could improve the CCS technology in order to achieve the idea to have the carbon neutrality. But now the problem is that this technology is not enough in order to achieve carbon neutrality. And I forgot another key point. When I define hydrogen as a potential game changer, in the medium term, I mentioned that some countries which have huge natural gas reserves, can play a transition role from an energy system based on fossil fuel to a green one. But at the same time, this country can change their energy status from gas, or better, using gas in order to produce hydrogen. But the key point, another very interesting point, in my opinion, in my research, is that other new suppliers can become important in the new energy system. For instance, Namibia or Spain, Chile, and other countries which will be able to produce enough green hydrogen, so replacing the current energy suppliers around the world, Middle East and Russia and other countries. Even if, as I mentioned, in the case of Middle East can be a kind of step-by-step process, because they can preserve their role as energy supplier in the medium term due to the possibility to develop the blue hydrogen. So we have the same vulnerabilities: the dependence on green hydrogen imports, the threats to the regularity of supplies, and the market volatility concerning prices. Of course, it is necessary to combine more investments and very modern technology in order to fill the gap and to be able to produce hydrogen to satisfy the global needs. Please, next slide. So you know about the scenarios backed by the main international agencies like IRENA and International Energy Agency, according to which it is necessary in order to achieve the 1.5 scenario that clean hydrogen will cover 10% of the final energy consumption, mainly based on the green hydrogen. In comparison, the scenario elaborated by the International Energy Agency, the net zero scenario, the hydrogen consumption will rise, of course, according to some ideas. This is a kind of case study scenario, which need that some of preconditions could be achieved in order to have this data and the possibility to have an energy a change in the global energy system. So it means that the attention of the public opinion and from the energy expert and analysts around the world is based on this very key option. But if you look at the current energy scenario, please, next slide, we can observe that in order to achieve the targets backed by the International Energy Agency, it is necessary to jump or to move from a local, regional dimension to an international system of distribution. This is another, what I mentioned, key point. It means that in order to deliver hydrogen from the production center to the markets, considering that all countries could be able to produce green, blue hydrogen, what you want, but some countries will not be able to produce enough green hydrogen. So it means a condition of dependence. So a replication of the energy system, and in which way it is possible to link production center and the consumption center with the use of the repurposed pipelines, or in the liquefied form in terms of ammonia, but through maritime routes. It means that the security of the sea lines of communication crossed by ammonia tankers in order to reach, I don't know, Namibia and the European Union need a condition of safety in order to preserve the regular energy supplies to the market. So, in my eyes, it's the same condition of vulnerability which currently affect the energy system, but also in the future, due to this condition, the same condition of vulnerability like in the past. And the ammonia, yes, okay. And also now, also today, 85% of hydrogen is consumed locally. I also mention the third largest energy consumer concerning hydrogen, China, the largest producer, one third of the global production. I think that you know that China is the largest investor in terms of renewable energy sources, in terms of supporting a green energy transition, investing a lot of billion of yuan and dollars, but also you know the needs of the energy system in China and also how the energy system is unbalanced, considering that more than 60% of the energy mix is based on coal. So, if you want to achieve the carbon neutrality, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen could be potential option, but this is not enough. And China is the main showcase element which characterize this condition of vulnerability around the world. I try to combine the different dimensions, the global dimension and the dimension, sorry, of the European Union. Next slide, please. Because you know that especially I am working about energy security and energy policies since a long time, and one of my key points during a lecture or during when I met students is that the current energy crisis in the European Union is not new. We have a lot of energy crises, 2006, 2009, 2014, 2013. In 2022, we have a significant geopolitical watershed because the European Union, for the first time, decided to commit in order to cut hydrocarbon imports from Russia. A good point. Also, the European Union elaborated several documents concerning the possibility to achieve the carbon neutrality, you know, the Green Deal, the Hydrogen Strategy 2020, and also the European Union revised the target concerning the production of green hydrogen from 5.6. So it is necessary, of course, to increase the production of the green hydrogen, and also it will be necessary the very huge investments. And the precondition is green hydrogen could be a feasible option, could be also a lucrative option if you want, yes, but it is necessary to invest. The precondition is to invest a lot of money, estimated 180 to 470 billion euros to build electrolyzers in order to increase the solar and wind production capacity of the European Union. This is the state of art in the European Union, but, next slide, please. You know, and please look at this slide, which this is a picture of the current vulnerability of the European Union, and translate this slide to the possibility to increase the production of green hydrogen. So a decreasing domestic production of oil and gas, it means that the European Union should increase the production of green hydrogen. High dependence on oil and gas imports, the European Union will not be able, I can anticipate one of my conclusion, but this is not a new, that the European Union will be able, Germany, Italy, and other countries as Romania, to produce green hydrogen. But if you look at the European Union as a union of 27 countries, so energy security for 27, it means a lot of green hydrogen, which should be available for all the countries. The slow implementation of diversification strategy, and this is another key point when we talk about the imports of green hydrogen and the political and social instabilities of some suppliers. You know that currently oil and gas suppliers for the European Union are not so reliable in terms of political and social instability. Well, look at the situation in the case of green hydrogen. We have more or less the same vulnerabilities. Of course, US or Norway are reliable partners, but countries in the sub-Saharan Africa or from Middle East are not so stable in terms to provide regular energy supplies to the markets. Next slide, please. So after 2022, the Repower EU, more ambitious plan, and 20 million tons of green hydrogen. According to the European Union, 10 million tons produced within the European Union, and the other 10 imported by the countries of the European Union. And this is one of the first step moving toward the conclusion, is the need to create the so-called hydrogen valleys. The idea to create a kind of European grid of distribution following three main import corridors. Next slide, please. The so-called European hydrogen backbone, a south corridor, a north corridor, and the east corridor. Concerning the south corridor, we can identify the same vulnerabilities. Morocco is one of the partners, the green partner of the European Union. At present, Morocco can benefit of a political stability as well as a business environment which is very profitable in order to invest in the realization of solar and wind project. It is good. There is the only electricity interconnection, from Morocco to Spain based on clean electricity, but the other countries in North Africa are affected by potential political condition of political instability, like the Arab Spring events show in the case of oil and gas. So this is a condition, according to me, a condition of vulnerability. Concerning the east vector, okay for Romania, which is a member of the European Union, but if you want to extend the eastern vector based on green hydrogen, this vector could be affected by volatility and vulnerability if it is based on the potential production of green hydrogen in Ukraine. At present, only the north corridor could be reliable, but it means to increase the production of clean electricity, especially from wind, in order to have enough renewable energy sources, the availability of enough renewable energy sources to realize the electrolysis process and to produce green hydrogen. One of the wrong approach, according to me, and especially for my country, Italy, based on the renewable energy sources, is, for instance, the deal with Algeria. I was born in Sardinia. This is the island in the heart of the Mediterranean. And some years ago, as I mentioned, I'm studying this topic since a long time. There was a project, the Galsi project, from Algeria crossing Sardinia in order to reach continental Italy, Tuscany region. Now, the current Italian government decided to replicate the Galsi project, but in order to obtain the financial support as well as the political support of the European Commission, which should be based on green hydrogen produced in Algeria. Good point in terms of diversification, in terms of new alternative supply for Italy and for the European Union. The problem is that Algeria currently is not producing green hydrogen. And you know that it is a very long-term process in order to start the production of green hydrogen in a country which lacks a very abundance of water in order to develop the electrolysis process. On the other hand, it is also true that investment could develop the desalinization process using the salt water of the Mediterranean in order to develop a production of green hydrogen. This is true, but it means investment, political cooperation between Italy and Algeria, as well as of the European Union. In short terms, Galsi project, which was supported now by the Italian government, is used in the framework of the repurposed gas pipeline, which could start to deliver gas to the European Union and to Italy and then to the European Union. And in the midterm, we can shift from using natural gas to using green hydrogen in order to satisfy the Italian demand. But In order to attract the financial investment of the European Union, at present, this project was presented as a repurposed pipeline to deliver green hydrogen. But once again, there is not green hydrogen production in Algeria. Next slide, please. Okay, concerning the capacity of the European Union, at present, 7.8 million tons of green hydrogen per year, 10% of the global demand. Germany and Netherlands, the largest consumers, and as my colleague previously highlighted, also the countries which are more engaged in order to develop international partnership, to share technology, to have more investment in order to increase this potential. For instance, when you mentioned Japan, Japan is a very interesting issue because Japan is also investing in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, and in the countries of the ASEAN region in order to increase the potential of hydrogen. And you know that Southeast Asia is very promising because they can combine different renewable energy sources, from geothermal to wind to solar to other renewable energy sources, to also diversify the possibility to have enough renewable energy sources to produce green hydrogen. And according to the studies, this is my I'm close to the conclusion. Only Spain could be a regional exporter of green hydrogen. We have different partnerships. The European Union is involved in different partnerships with other countries, Morocco, Algeria, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, in order to develop this potential. But one of the dilemma is the following one. Please, next slide. Based on a study of that I think that you know this very interesting study written by de Blasio and Pluffman in 2020, starting from the three parameters that I mentioned you: the availability of low-cost renewable energy sources, the availability of water, and the infrastructural potential for production, internal distribution, and export. We can draw up the future energy scenario based on green hydrogen. And I partially support this vision because some issues, I support some issues, then other can be debated, but this is our work to open debate on this very sensitive issue. Next slide, please. We have new emerging suppliers and countries which will lose their energy status, and also countries which highlight the same condition of vulnerabilities. We have the group one, countries which will be able to combine the three parameters and then to be able to export green hydrogen to the markets: Australia, Morocco, maybe Namibia, and other countries. Countries two, these countries, the countries which are included in the group two, are countries which hold abundant renewable energy sources but limited freshwater resources. So the possibility to produce enough green hydrogen can be limited. We can look at the Middle East countries, even if you know that the sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East can be able to fill the gap, investing in the desalination process, so increasing the production of green hydrogen. Group three, the countries which will be able to produce green hydrogen, but not enough to satisfy the domestic needs. So they will be dependent on imports. European Union, China, and Japan. The similar situation of today. In the case of the European Union, maybe Spain could be able to be self-sufficient, but if you look at the situation of the European Union as a 27 countries, it could be a little bit complicated. The group four, countries which combine all the three parameters, but their ability to be an exporter of green hydrogen depend on the make or buy decision. So it depends on the economical feasibility to produce green hydrogen, or the same dilemma which characterize some of the oil and gas suppliers today, which so the dilemma to allocate oil and gas to the lucrative international markets and to increase the production of renewable energy sources in order to satisfy the domestic needs. So it could be a way to preserve their condition in the global energy system. And group 5, the impossibility to build regional infrastructure in order to deliver green hydrogen to the markets. But if this picture is more or less true or debatable, it's very interesting according to me, but the same vulnerabilities which affect the current energy scenario can be showed by the next slide. If you want to deliver ammonia and green hydrogen to the markets by maritime routes, these countries should cross the same maritime choke points. Maybe this is not the case of Namibia, in order to Gibraltar is very close to the European Union, but look at the possibility to increase green hydrogen production in the Middle East, Hormuz Strait, or the possibility for China and Japan and South Korea to import green hydrogen from other countries which have to cross Malacca Strait. So the same condition of vulnerability. So in conclusion, my last slide in terms of conclusion, I think that the midterm dilemma should be solved. The last slide show that my conclusions. It's not possible to have my conclusion. No? Okay. So there is a great potential linked to the green hydrogen, but we can show the same, as I mentioned, unchanged dependence for some countries. The unsolved problem and key priority to solve in order to avoid the current vulnerability for the countries around the world is how to link the production center and the largest consumer centers. Also, the transit through a third country, if affected by political stability, will represent another condition of weakness. And the medium-term dilemma, my fear is that due to the economic cost to produce green hydrogen and the investment which are the preliminary condition to develop a clean energy production, developing solar, wind, but also other renewable energy sources, maybe some countries can shift in the medium term to produce hydrogen from natural gas, from nuclear, from other polluting, more or less polluting, but polluting, so not green like renewable energy sources, in order to fill the gap in this transition period. So I think that only with a political, but a fair political commitment of the countries around the world, it will be possible to fully exploit the huge potential represented by green hydrogen. Instead of this, I think that the global energy scenario will remain vulnerable and will remain affected by the same condition of vulnerabilities. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much for this informative and really interesting presentation, Mr. Indeo. It was really deep details about all effects on the green hydrogen energy, with the geopolitical way, with the technological development way, with the country relations and international relations. All of the details was in this presentation. So thank you so much for that. Just not take too much time. I think we have 2 questions from audience. One of them is not like a question, but maybe questioning about the green hydrogen energy. I will just read. For 1 million tons of hydrogen, 10 gigawatt electrolyzer, 20 gigawatt renewable, the total one is $30 billion needed. Who will accept such a low feasibility sources as a game changer? I think it is about like producing of this kind of the energy is really huge cost. So do you think that the green hydrogen energy will be really a game changer in the future if we think about that?
Yes, thanks for the very interesting question. So it is the way to open a debate because I agree with you. This is the same that potentially green hydrogen can be a game changer. But also the green transition, you know, there are a lot of critics concerning the cost of the green transition. But this is my opinion. I have one opinion as a personal opinion and an opinion as an analyst. In my opinion, personal opinion, I think that the green transition is necessary because the world is jumping in a very nightmare scenario. At the same time, with the eyes of the analyst, I know that there is a high cost in order to successfully achieve the green energy transition or the carbon neutrality. You mentioned very precise data, but also if you look how it is possible to achieve a carbon neutrality by 2050. Also for the European Union can be difficult, but also for China. China is importing more than 10 million barrels of oil per day. And also coal is the main source in order to produce electricity. And suddenly in 2050, maybe 2060, China could be carbon neutral. It's very hard to understand a similar issue. It's very complicated. It's not impossible because China can invest a lot of money in order to achieve this aim. But it means also a very significant effort of the public opinion and the citizens in order to say, okay, a lot of billions should be allocated in order to produce clean electricity in order to save the world. It is very complicated. In economic term, it depends on how is performant as profitable to produce green hydrogen. If you know about the solar potential in the sub-Saharan region, it could be enough to satisfy the clean electricity demand of the European Union. But it needs political stability and investment as well as political commitment. It's very hard to combine all the elements. But and also to deliver. It is not so close, African countries to the European Union. It is necessary to realize the clean, interconnectors linking the two shores of the Mediterranean. It is a very expensive process, and so it was one of my conclusions, the dilemma. Okay, it is too expensive. Maybe waiting for the technology, maybe waiting for investment, we can develop blue hydrogen and pink or orange hydrogen based on nuclear, which can be cheaper than green hydrogen. But also for nuclear, please that if all the countries shift to nuclear option, it means a new revitalized competition in order to buy uranium around the world. And we have very few suppliers of uranium around the world. Kazakhstan, Canada, Australia, Niger, and other countries. So a new competition among them.
Thank you so much for the reply. And maybe 2 minutes for our last question that we have. Another audience just texted that. We know that the CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage, enable hydrogen production. However, it faced several challenges, and I am curious about your expectation in that. So it is about carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology and the green hydrogen production. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that a part of the answer of this very interesting question was already done. It means that at present, if we can, this technology is, can allow to save 90% of the pollution. It is not completely green, but could be a realistic step. Not so expensive. It is also expensive, but not expensive like to produce green hydrogen. So my fear, and in this case, the carbon capture technology and storage can be a way to preserve, as I mentioned, the energy status of the countries which now give the cards in the global energy scenario. Algeria, Middle East countries, Australia, United States, the same countries. So in that case, hydrogen cannot be a game changer. A game changer if countries like Spain, Namibia, Morocco could be considered and legitimized as a new energy supplier. In that case, in the case of blue hydrogen produced by gas, we have a kind of translation, a kind of mm, confirmation of the same suppliers around the world. And I think that in that case, it will be hard to achieve the carbon neutrality because it is promising, but not so promising because it hamper to achieve the complete carbon neutrality. It could be a significant step, but also in Italy, we have different projects in the Adriatic Sea backed by the national energy companies, which slowly move steps due to the difficulty and the very huge investment which this technology requires. Maybe studies and investment and the research and development could improve this technology, but I think once again, in the long term, it is necessary to increase the production and the feasibility, the economic feasibility of the green hydrogen.
Thank you so much for your answer. And now we can go our last presentation with our esteemed speakers, Mr. Chelsea, and his presentation will be about connecting Africa and Euromed energy systems. So, floor is yours, Mr. Chelsea. We are listening for you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I try to show my presentation because there is a command here. Slide, file, video, condividi schermo.
No, okay. we can see that. If you want, we can also move the slides. How it is suitable for you, we can try it.
Can I share the? Well, okay. Anyway, yes. Okay. Okay. I introduce myself rapidly. I am an engineer. I am a former executive officer in Enel Group and Terna, and today I am chairman of a group of engineering company specialized in the electricity energy sector and the electricity sector. The first problem I would like to approach and discuss, to share with you, I found very interesting the last presentation, and I think that we have to decide in next future. We are in a transition phase in Europe, and all the main pillars of the energy strategy for EU are rethinking. Then we are to wait for the opinion of the new European Parliament, because we are convicted that there will be a general revision of the European energy strategy. Then the problem is to set in a scheme the decision-making process in order to make the choice, even in the case of the hydrogen. I appreciated the conclusion of Mrs. Eugenia about the choice for which is the problem. There is a problem. Okay. Gusilov for preferring the mature technologies for concentrated use of hydrogen. But all my colleagues spoke about the international approach. There is no country that can afford a personal, individual strategy in the energy sector. We have to set up our decision-making procedure in the scheme of international interaction of the energy sources and energy solutions. We are to face a common future. We would like to make some proposal for how to work together. The Mediterranean is surrounded by deep areas of crisis and wars. The conflicts will not end until a shared post-war scenario is established, and energy is a pillar of next scenario because it's part of the problem and part of the solution. A vision for the common future should be based on concrete objectives. Concrete, I mean, it's possible a scheduling of the objective and to quantify the resources and the needs and possible uses. Building the common future require dialogue, cooperation, and a methodology. The primary condition for lasting peace is dialogue, and this is a very good beginning for a discussion with our friends and colleagues. For a reliable resources to invest in mutual trust. The methodology, please, the collaboration is just the Turkey and Italy are both the gateways between Europe and the Mediterranean. So they have a significant impact on the future of the Mediterranean. Let's be part of it. We can try. We have to try. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Then I would like to share with you a concrete example in order to consider the implication, technical, geopolitical, and market implication. We have to consider that the final judge is the market. Then today's I want to speak with you about a project launched 10 years ago, but only today is being realized. Next step, please. What objective is translating opportunities into projects based on objectives of concrete common interest. The tool we propose is the theory of complex systems. In this case, a SWOT analysis should be the classify and define the terms of the decision-making procedure. The analysis of internal and external factors affecting the projects, and the aim to define strategic and action plan for a post-war scenario in the Mediterranean. Next slide, please. This is the current situation. This is a map of the electricity grids in 2004. Today is quite the same. This is the problem. This is the problem of time horizon of our decision. You can see the difference between the northern side of the Mediterranean and the south side of the Mediterranean. Integration is a very enormous problem, but absolutely necessary to balance the relationship between countries and energy systems. you can see the mesh. This is the map of very high voltage lines. In red, the 400 kV, and in green, the lines in 2020 kV. Please consider the mesh. The mesh of the grid is directly proportional. Just a moment. To the, no, just a moment, please. Directly proportional to GDP per capita in each country. Again, you can consider that the energy transition is based on the renewable energy sources. And renewable energy sources produce electricity. Then the big priority, the challenge is how to promote electricity consumption. If all the scenario defined during the last 2 years speak about double of the electricity consumption in our countries. To double electricity consumption is an enormous, is a revolution, is not an evolution. Is very difficult, it takes a lot of time. Then we have to imagine that priority in southern side of the Mediterranean is to produce electricity, not to storage electricity. Do you remember desert project? I remember very well. Then I hope we go to do new mistake and not to repeat the older one. Consider the contingency, the situation of the energy system, and the priority of the energy system. There is no one national energy system. All the energy systems are interconnected, are interacting. Even if there are no connection, then the connection can give the flexibility to go ahead in toward our common future. Next slide, please. This is the SWOT analysis. Is the scheme of SWOT analysis we realized for the connection, the ELMED project, the connection, electricity connection between Italy and Tunisia 10 years ago. Please consider the time horizons. Then, a SWOT analysis is an analysis considering the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. I think you know very well because it's a very old methodology, it's not my proposal. It's an application. Then, there are internal analytics and external analytics, the strengths of the projects, integration of electrical system and related markets, creation of international joint venture for the cooperation between companies, joint initiative in third countries. Not only, please remember that each interconnection is never a bilateral value, is always part of multilateral connections, because the interaction between energy systems is unavoidable. Among the strengths, the availability of foreign direct investment, and we have to promote the resource sharing. Resources are not only energy resources, are energy resources, technical resources, scientific knowledge, financial resources. All these have a part in the project. And the complementarity of industrial structure, for example, the relevance of small and medium enterprises, because the structure of the industrial sector is difficult and consequent to the culture of a country, to the economy of a country, and of its history of a country. Then the last strength is logistic. Tunisia and Italy are very close, not only in geographic terms. Then the opportunities are clear: economic, industrial, cultural, historical, and geographical reciprocity. Job creation and labor sharing. We have a situation, the migration is a consequence of the imbalances of job creation and labor demand. Accession to the European market to valorize the resources, which is the value of a megawatt. It's the value fixed by the European market in our situation. Sharing knowledge of African local markets. We have to know the African local markets for speaking about integration, and the European technological know-how. We can share this knowledge between us and our colleagues in the southern side of the Mediterranean. We have to consider also the Italian company's financial structure and availability for participate in financing the new projects. And the Tunisian culture open to trade is an historical approach of Tunisia, and the strategic geographical location of Tunisia. Tunisia is in the center of Maghreb, near to Mashrek. Tunisia is the gateway for Libya. Is an historical lesson, is not an opinion. Then we have to consider weaknesses and threats. There are the first weaknesses are regulatory environment out of alignment with the EU. When we connect two systems, we have to make compliant the regulatory framework. Legal, regulatory, and technical rules in order to make possible the integration of two energy systems. Another problem are the subsidies for Tunisian energy tariffs, because to establish the value of national generation of electricity, that depends on the price of electricity, of course. Then we have to limit these weaknesses to promote an evolution of the electricity market in Tunisia. And the lack of banking services. This is a problem in all the south side of the Mediterranean. And the companies exposition to non-governmental risk that they cannot manage. Yet we have to shield the companies participating in the project from this kind of risks. Then the threats are clear. The legal and regulatory framework differs from the European one, which hinders integration. The presence of foreign armed force in North Africa today is associated with threats such as institutional instability and security issues and migration in Sahel, the south. All the country of the Sahel has been interested by COPE during the last year. Then this is a very big obstacle for integration. Then the related pressure from foreign geopolitics and the occurrence of an economic and humanitarian crisis. Migration and job creation are the first priority for our friends of the south side of the Mediterranean shore. From this analysis, we have to derive the possible internal actions and the external actions. I lose the time. Speaking about the time horizon.
Still, you have almost like a 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay.
10 or 15 minutes.
Then I leave I prefer to leave this presentation to you in order to analyze and evaluate this kind of path for making for decision making to arrive at an action plan, shared action plan, if we want to promote integration of the energy system. Next slide, please. Now, I do not present this slide because you can read them if Mrs. Fatma could send to you. Then we go to the end of my presentation because I think you have understood my approach and my framework and why we are discussing about this. Next step, next slide, please. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Then we have to develop a common strategy to enhance strengths and opportunity and to counter weaknesses and threat. Enhancing strategic function of integration of the Euro-Mediterranean and African energy system for opening new markets, new trade corridor, diversification, our supply chain for energy resources and raw materials. All raw materials necessary for the energy transition, like lithium, for example, in this moment, waiting for the new generation of batteries, I hope. Exploitation of synergies between Euro-Mediterranean and African enterprises. With a focus on industrial structure, we have to share knowledge and know-how, because the cooperation is essential for shared risks of new investment in these countries. Promoting the presence of Euro-Mediterranean companies in Africa is not a bilateral relationship that can solve this problem between Italy and Tunisia, for example, or other countries. We have to organize a multilateral participation to develop a market, a new market, boosting foreign direct investment, activating a pilot plan for the blue economy. All these resources have to be shared. through a grid of exchange, of the trading exchange. And the maritime exchange are responsible for 90% of the trading of goods at the world. Then we have to involve creating a network of ports and intermodality between maritime and rail transport to reduce localization constraints, enhance job creation, and improve new commercial logistics. This is what I mean. The blue economy is a new way for open new corridor, trade corridor. Means to is the networking of the ports and intermodality between ports and rail corridors, because transport is the main sector for energy consumption and is the life of all our economies. Creating a commercial hub in Tunisia between Mediterranean and Africa would help to direct the value of the African resources on the European market, because the price is fixed on a market, and the reference market in this area is the European one, the larger market in the Mediterranean. Next step, please. Next step, please. Next step. Then the energy sector is the starting point for managing the underlying regional conflicts that threaten the security and stability of the Mediterranean and all countries in the MENA region. I translate this in energy terms and in energy projects. My job has been, during the last 20 years, business development in the energy sector. The creation of a safer, more stable and sustainable regional state order cannot be achieved without a vision of a possible post-war scenario. The war will end when we have built and shared a post-war scenario based on the pillar of the economy of our countries. Energy is part of this problem, the main part in this moment. Please remember that the main problem between Turkey and the rest of the Mediterranean is in Cyprus, not in Africa, because of the availability of gas resources is a main problem. With this approach, we can focus the objective on which to focus the decision and the choices. Role of gas, role of hydrogen also, but role of electricity. Because think that in this moment, Egypt has become importer of gas. He was an exporter of gas. Because the situation in the sea, in the Red Sea, after the attacks of Houthi mercenary. Your attention, please. Egypt is a country of 10 millions of people. 10 millions. The same problem is a Jordan for the Jordan people. There is a terrible constraints in the energy sector in the Mediterranean and in Europe. Then a long-term vision for favorable conditions may not all be ripe today. It is important to be aware that an alternative future exists for Europe, for the Mediterranean, for the Middle East, and for Africa, whether regional actors cooperate in this direction. For our role, the role of engineering companies, of center of research like the Roman Center of Research, like universities, is to build the dialogue for focusing the objective and the priorities. Next step, please. This is, I hope, I have transmitted the sense of my approach, is to translate, as all the engineering are obliged to do so, to translate hope in plan and in project, in concrete project, without always remembering the reason for which the choice we made. This is my approach I'd like to share with you, because it's very important to promote the dialogue on concrete projects in the Mediterranean.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really, again, informative and with deep analysis. You were marking the name of the Tunisia as a port of the energy, like for European countries. And I read a few times that there's also like they're calling the Tunisia as like a green battery, like for green hydrogen resources, for renewable resources. And there was many huge projects that they were about to support the Tunisia. But if I was just thinking that if you think about a country which can replace the Tunisia, what could be in the Mediterranean, in North African countries or in the Middle East? What could be the second country that we can think about instead of the Tunisia? And another thing, it is really hard to get energy security in that area, as you told. Like when you talk about the country, you are talking many threats or many negative side of that because of the region, because of the geopolitics. So do you think that like as European Union can think always about North African or the Middle East countries as like secure regions, or regions which you can always with developing, with supporting, with doing some the huge the supports with money, with the dialogues, with every way. Still, you can think that a secure region, or maybe you can change your view to the other continents. So what do you think about that? Because as I think about the Middle East or Mediterranean region, it's always confused parts. And as the before presentations also we talked, we need security, especially energy security, continuously get or transport or import or export security, or maybe basic things for us to continue to get or import or export. So what do you think about it? The first thing, that why we are always on the focusing on the Tunisia. If there is any second country that in your mind you have, and the second is, what do you think about the regional security for European Union?
Thank you very much. Tunisia is only an example. It's a very little country, but is in a strategic position between Sahel, Maghreb, and Mashrek. Then this is an example, but the problem are general. Then what is the meaning? We have to face together this kind of problem. We cannot leave Tunisia alone with the European Union on the other side. Is a common problem, and we need to share the solutions. And the solutions are integration of energy systems, because energy is not a material raw. Energy, electricity is a you cannot touch, but is life of our everyday lives. Then, no, please not consider only Tunisia. Is only an example. You can imagine that these problems are common in all the Eastern and Western Mediterranean for different reasons and for different situations. Palestine, Syria, India, the enlarged Mediterranean, which arrived to the Arab Peninsula, which the countries of these areas are part of our future. Then we have to find the condition for integrate this economy, and the energy integration is the base for economic and development integration. There are no alternatives. Energy is the life of our countries, like Turkey and Italy, for example. We import energy like European Union. European Union is the larger market import in the world. Then European Union, we cannot fail in this choice. That's because energy will be the next focus for the new European Parliament next month and going on in the next years. Countries like Romania, Bulgaria, all the countries that are in the eastern part of the European Union, like Italy for the Mediterranean, have a very important role. For example, at the boundary with Turkey. Turkey is the last big country between Europe and Asia and the Middle East. Is a bridge, like Italy is a bridge toward Africa in this moment. But on the other side of the bridge, there is Europe. There is not Italy, not Romania or Germany. And even Germany will change its approach to energy strategy. It's important to exploit the opportunities and in each countries of the European Union and of the Mediterranean. Please think the Mediterranean is the ring, the connection between Atlantic and Pacific area. You can imagine the dimension of the problem is never national, and the energy problems are never national. Then dialogue, the base, the first step of this process, cooperation and methodology, how to approach the solution of the energy problem, because they have to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. In this moment, energy is part of the problem, and Turkish colleagues know very well this problem. I hope I have answered to your question.
Thank you so much. So thank you for your presentation. We came to end of our panel, and our esteemed guest, Eugenia, do you want to say a few sentences more for the end of the panel, or do you want to share your thoughts with us? Your phone's mute. Your microphone is mute.
Yes, now it's good. I will try. We have talked about, I mean, the scope of our discussion was large because hydrogen is big enough of a topic. If we factor in geopolitics, Mediterranean and North Africa, it gets even bigger. So for me, at least, sitting in Romania, Tunisia is very far away from our day-to-day problems. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. What I wanted to say is that it feels to me that this first push that we had at the European level to embrace hydrogen, which was then accelerated by Russia's aggression in Ukraine, at least in Romania's case, slowed down, right? Because we see that Romania initially wanted, first hydrogen strategy draft, the 4 gigawatts capacity, significant utilization in transport, but then collected some feedback and for some reason halved, right, from 280,000 tons of green hydrogen to 150, and reduced its utilization in transport. So we see that while industry is more eager to embrace and make the investments to transition to using green hydrogen, not the same can be said about the actors in the transport sector, which would rather, at least in Romania, they would rather push and develop the use of biofuels. And I think that's the take of the main, let's say, diesel and gasoline producers in Romania. OMV Petrom, reading between the lines, they don't want the hydrogen probably, they want biofuels. That's why this pushback on the uptake of hydrogen in the mobility sector, despite the fact that initially it was quite ambitious. We saw the draft strategy reflect that. So we see that, irrespective of the targets that the EU sets, how fast we will reach them, if we will reach them, or if we will, overshoot those targets, depends pretty much on the also on the appetite of the companies to make the necessary investments, specifically if these investments rely on private money, right? So when there is public money involved, that's another matter. But when they have to pay out of their own pocket to make these investments, they are not in a rush, at least in Romania, to make investments, to build hydrogen refueling stations, for instance. So from this point of view, we saw that whether there was a push, like modern push to embrace hydrogen in mobility, then we see a conservative backlash. No, not so much, not so fast. At least that's, my take and the way I see things unfolding in Romania, right? In the sense that they do not want to be pushed to move too fast on this. Although, being ambitious sounded like a good thing initially, right? So we'll see. But I expect the pace of development, and what we see is the appetite in Western Europe, in Northern Europe, even in Central Europe, I would place it higher above the appetite, which is lower in Eastern Europe, to embrace these new technologies. So we will do something, most likely not, we could do more, but we are not willing to at the moment, to put it elegantly.
Madam, I completely agree with you, but the first priority for decarbonization of energy consumption in the transport sector is electricity. Then the shift from
fossil fuel,
actual vehicle to railroad is the first priority for all of us if you want to reduce the environmental impact of the sector, of the transport sector. The electric vehicle is good for short range, for city, not for long range. Then intermodality between maritime transport, railroad and electrical vehicle is very important.
True.
I would like to arrive with a train, with a rail in Romania, not with air, because the air transport is a problem today
Yeah.
with the rising of cost, always for the energy constraints.
I would like to use
Exactly.
more the
And you are
railroad
right.
because
Hydrogen hydrogen is not a fuel. Hydrogen is a vector. The problem of the hydrogen is storage and transport. To transport uh, um, hydrogen is still a problem, not solved. There is no solution in this moment. You can use gas pipeline for hydrogen. That's for sure. Is a danger. Then the future is, and you spoke about this, to focus in the more mature technologies. Refinery, cycle of ammonia, for example, if they will produce a new fuel for heavy synthesis fuel, because hydrogen cannot be used for airplane. This is a big problem. The air transport sector. Then promote the transport by electricity in the railroad infrastructure, intermodality with maritime transport, and this is already a very big objective with big priority. And hydrogen, I can suggest to you, but I think you know, the report of Agora, the name was No Regret Hydrogen, made by AFRI, an important.
I know.
If you if you can exchange, madam, our mail address, I can send to you all this paper that is not made by me and is an important international consultant like AFRI.
I will read it gladly.
The conclusion was exactly, please prefer the focus the attention on direct use of hydrogen. This is the more sure and risk. You can always translate risk in money. This is a typical
I am glad,
problem of
Romania.
engineers. We have always arrived with an economic offer. All the engineering company is our job. But but when you speak about risk, I imagine costs. And this is the approach of the companies. Always. The companies have to stay on the market. You know, and we can share with you the discussion in Europe during the last years on the energy sector. For example, the greenhouses. It is impossible. The European Union have to approach the system of the energy system, not my house. In my house, I am from south of Italy. You are from Romany. You can imagine that in south of Italy, the problem of heating house is zero. We have the problem of climatization, not how to heating the house. this is
Well,
difficult.
they differ across Europe, that's true, but
Exactly.
Europe do has a prerogative in regulating this
Exactly.
sector, the
You
building sector.
cannot
So
regulate my house. You have to regulate the system. Then we have to make compliant the specific situation in each countries in Europe and in the Mediterranean, where the differences, the Mediterranean is the site of differences, but even the site of a common history. Do you know the Turkish cheese, very famous? I can speak with my friend. Your Turkish cheese, kashkaval. Do you know? Do you know?
that's Romanian. Kashkaval.
No, it's also in Slovenia, but the Slovenia is because they is a Turkish procedure for make cheese.
Probably an import.
Do you
Yeah.
know in the south of Italy how we call kashkaval? Kashkaval. Exactly the same word.
The same in
But
Romania. It's Kashkaval.
exactly for the same reason was the I do not want to speak about
But
history,
that's a
but
different
you
topic.
know
That's
very
food.
well is part of the same history. In then the system approach must to be the approach proposed to the European Union and to the Mediterranean countries. Then, within the same framework, we have to respect the specific exigent needs of each country and the characteristics of each countries, because we have to mix this to to make compliant these differences. And this is the main problem. Is do not I am an engineer. I'm not an historical analyst, and then but we have to leave this to understand these differences, to consider these differences in our strategic plan for development for each projects. All the project will have to be set up in this scheme.
But
If we share the scheme, is a strong step toward a common future. That's
I I want to add something to what you're saying. I do not have the feeling that the EU is putting a gun to our heads and tells us to do, this or that. I mean, I think the EU leaves us enough space to choose, the degree of involvement. And I mean, sure, it guides us, and it would like, Romania, Bulgaria, other countries to walk on this path and to start developing some hydrogen utilization, new ones in our
that
countries. But you can do more or you can do less. I think the EU already takes into account the national specificities, to the extent that you can have, even within one country, you can have, let's say, a regional or a hydrogen roadmap for a specific region. So there can be a national hydrogen strategy, and there can be a roadmap for one region, or for a city and its surroundings. So I do not think the EU restricts us in that way, that we cannot adapt to what we actually need and how fast or slow we want to go with this.
absolutely we have we have to have we do have trust in market, and the European in Brussels they have to define the rules of these markets, but the functioning of the market is not. We have to find the road in each country, and we have to ensure the compliance of the different strategic plan or development plan for the national government and companies. even because the companies, there is, even in the market, there is no more Italian companies. We have a lot of Italian companies in Romania.
True.
Then, which is the difference? Is an Italian problem or a Romanian problem? Is a common problem. Important is to separate the job of the company, of the companies, of the governments, and of the European Union. If not, there is a big confusion and it is difficult to reach operational, objective, concrete. This is the site where you can evaluate the success of a project, the concreteness of the results, and even of the cause. The causes are always, I said, in the in Western Mediterranean, the problem has a name. And the name is Cyprus. I'm not a political operator. I do not want to participate in the political, but the analysis of the system, this is my job. Which is the result today, the damages today, to evaluate the damages of the war in Palestine, the war in Syria, the war in Libya, the war, we are full of war. But we have obliged as engineer, as a center of research, of universities, to share an approach and try to share the knowledge necessary to develop new projects. The single characteristic, the single technology, even the technology is like an arm. Is a good or is a bad thing? It depends on the use you do of this article. Then the technology is the result of a decision-making procedure. Then we could discuss and share knowledge, even because TESPAN is an association of universities. And then we have to connect a center of research like you. And we have to connect this for a common discussion. This is the first step for the right operator, an association of universities.
Okay, well, thank you so much for this informative conclusion. It was really grateful to being listening these talks and the presentation and everything. And I hope also our audience also get many view and opinion about the political side, technological side, and with all of the deep way about hydrogen energy. And I'm really thanks for you to accept our invitation and to come to here, and you stayed with us for a long time panel. So I will leave the floor for closing to our panel to our Vice President, TESPAN Vice President Ali Murat Becerikli. And again, I'm thankful to you to join this panel and discuss with us with these valuable topics. Thank you a lot. And I'm looking forward to see you again in our future events. So, floor is yours, basically.
And we can start with sharing the email address.
Of course, of course. We will arrange it.
Thank you. Oh. No, there is no.
Thank you very much for your participation. Today we have to study on some issues, which is the major topic in the EU and the institutions' papers, the hydrogen issue. And as we all know, the EU is the biggest market, and on the other side, EU is the most institutional structure for making this topic into the world's agenda. So what is the EU situation? We try to monitor some of the latest events and also the geopolitics together with. But I would like to take an attention on the situation that together with the white paper of the European Union on the energy transition and including the third energy package, we all see that the market establishment of a market in the EU-wide is very important for participation of the private sector in the energy business, both for generation and both for the distribution side. When we look at the latest situation, the One Market Directive is in use as a directive, but still has not concluded its evaluation, especially in the eastern side of the EU. This is very important. The market is very important to encourage more private sector to make investment and also the financial sector to be in the picture. On the other hand, the technology on the hydrogen is developing very well, especially in the storage of the hydrogen. As we know that the hydrogen is not a heavy issue; it's the lightest material, but the storage of it, the transportation of it, is extremely expensive and it needs a high technology. And nowadays, we follow that the industrial companies has invested on the 700 bars storages with lightweight. So this makes hydrogen to be an opportunity to transfer and use it in the transportation as well. What is necessary? The clearing houses for the natural gas, for the pipelines, as we followed from the ENTSOG, the technical studies, the technical glossary for the natural gas is developed well, but it's not developed for the hydrogen yet. So the technical standards to achieve the business of a hydrogen is on a premature position. On the other hand, the natural gas on the market has been priced different ways, such as kilowatt hour per, and MMBTU, LNG gas price, pipeline gas price are different. But how we will see the hydrogen in the market picture, this is still flu and it's still under discussion. Some engineers like me, the old ones, we calculate the hydrogen from the weight of it as the million tons. But on the other hand, the market is the economists are looking at the issue from the kilowatt megawatts perspective. These are other topics to be developed, I think, and additionally, the water issue, the water salination, desalination of the water from the Mediterranean is very expensive, because when you are producing hydrogen, you need a large amount of water to be used, and the desalination from the sea is very important for this issue, because internal waters are very low, and because of the climate issue, the internal waters are reducing day by day. So when you invest for a 30 years perspective, the internal waters will make some people upset. That's why the desalination is the very most cost in the hydrogen generation. And one of the good things is the 15% of the pipelines for the natural gas can be used for transportation of hydrogen together with the natural gas. This is a good thing, because when you look at the latest situation to the EU, the LNG is very important in the EU market. So the Qatarian and American ships are carrying large amounts of LNG, but if they include some hydrogen in it, so the transportation of the hydrogen included in a natural gas ambience will reduce the costs on the other hand and make it feasible maybe, but it is not exceeding the 15% so far. When we look at the geopolitics on the other hand, as the Egyptian corridor for the ships maritime, it is about to be closed nowadays, especially for the energy transportation, because of the geopolitical problems, especially lived in the Palestine. The Israel tankers are avoiding to use the corridor especially, and they want to transfer the maritime over the African continent. So it takes more than 30 days to make the shipment. So on the other hand, another issue, EU is very willingness on the renewables, on the green world, but on the additionally this geopolitical problems like Ukrainian and Russian war and the Gaza, Palestine and Israel issue, it makes European industry very problematic on the geopolitics, and all the European persons as well leave these geopolitical problems on their wallets. So avoiding from these geopolitical risks on the daily life, European Union probably mobilized all the funds to secure the supply of the energy through Europe. So when you balance those things, of course there will be a hydrogen in the European energy mixture, but it will, on the other side, the technically and economically, it will be limited. We thank you very much as TESPAM to join us and enlighten all our participants and members, especially from academicians and professionals and students and public management. We would like to see you more again, our contributions, our events, for your contributions. I would like to thank you very much and see you in the next events as well.
Thank you for the invitation and for organizing this event today.
Thank you.